we need to have a conversation about epistemology and what it means for social cohesion in Australia. Let's start with a simple question, which, if you'll humor me for a minute, I promise you is not nearly as crazy as you might believe.
Have you really thought about what it would take to fake a moon landing?
Stepped into the building, changes singing on my neck, gold rings on my fingers, something on my wrist, tucked into my waist, see me with a clip, big glass of the bomb.
Wipe that smug smile off your face.
Because the rocket did launch. We all saw the rocket launch, okay?
No, not okay. I didn't see the rocket launch. I bet you didn't see the rocket launch. And Neil deGrasse Tyson was just an 11-year-old boy living in leafy Riverdale, New York in 1969, so he didn't see the launch either. None of us saw it.
So there's hardware there. They're like office buildings, blueprints for the design of the Saturn V rocket. The hundreds of engineering hours that went behind this and the records of those designs.
None of which any of us have ever actually seen, nor do we suspect Mr. deGrasse Tyson has ever seen.
What are we talking about?
What we are talking about is a set of assumptions, premises, which you and I and Mr. deGrasse Tyson and others consider to be axiomatic about the world. Such as, for example, that if the records weren't there, someone would have said something. These are premises so deeply internalized within our understanding of reality that we don't even recognize them as assumptions, as things we take to be axiomatic, but which, in fact, are not. Premises and assumptions about things like the integrity of our politics, the intellectual rigor, transparency, and curiosity of our press, the possibility that large numbers of people might see something false and yet stay silent. What happens, however, when something causes even highly intelligent people to start doubting those assumptions, or at least to realize that they are not as axiomatic as once people believed?
Look, we've got major bases on the moon. There's a big equatorial water base and at the North and South Pole, and, we got the base. And there's an alien base, at Mars, they're giving it to us, and there's a chore on the moon, or whatever the name of the moon is.
Wipe that smug smile off your face. If you had to explain rigorously why Alex Jones shouldn't be taken seriously, but were required as a constraint of your argument to not rely on any assumptions about those aforementioned premises about society we consider axiomatic, about our government, press, and fellow citizens, if you had to do that, we suspect you'd struggle.
It's a reality that we have known for a long time, in our shithole countries.
If you've ever been to a less developed country with an authoritarian system and an unfree press, and had dinner with a local, even an elite, highly educated, charming, gracious, fluent English-speaking local.
Yes, we have seen this movie before.
And after that dinner went back to your hotel room and said to your partner, "Man, these people are obsessed with crazy conspiracy theories. You know what I'm talking about right now."
Everyone in third world countries, they know.
The thing is, the difference between you and me and them, or you and me and someone who consumes Alex Jones's content, isn't necessarily IQ, or education, or culture, or sophistication. It's what statisticians call priors. It's assumptions. And when you recognize that the ideas and beliefs of those crazy conspiracy mongers might actually be more rational than you appreciate, once you recognize the assumptions they have about the world, you realize how fragile our shared consensus about reality really might be. That's a statement about epistemology and intelligence. All forms of intelligence. From the intelligence that assigns a probability to this or that outcome, as articulated first by the Reverend Thomas Bayes, to robotics, computer vision, and especially language. In fact, it's the T in ChatGPT. Imagine two computer vision systems looking at this scene. If their training sets were sufficiently different, and the features they learned to extract were different, they will literally see this same scene differently. Just like you and your MAGA uncle arguing about politics over Christmas lunch. Priors matter. Priors matter a lot.
Because the rocket did launch. We all saw the rocket launch, okay?
More often than we care to admit, they even matter more than our direct observation.
So there's hardware there. They're like office buildings of blueprints for the design of the Saturn V rocket.
Which is something we don't like to believe about ourselves.
Hey, can I ask you something?
What?
What's forget about it? What is that?
Forget about it. It's like, if you agree with someone, you know, like Raquel Welch's one great piece of ass, forget about it. But then, if you disagree, like a Lincoln is better than a Cadillac, forget about it.
That's why men who speak the same language, in the same culture, can struggle with the meaning of the words like, forget about it.
You know? But then, it's also like if something is the greatest thing in the world, like me and get those peppers, forget about it, you know? But it's also like saying go to hell, too. Like, you know, like, hey, Paulie, you got a 1-inch. Paulie says, forget about it.
Forget about it. Paulie, forget about it.
That now iconic scene from Donnie Brasco illustrates a point we don't pay enough attention to. Priors matter. They don't just matter in probability theory. They matter in language. They matter in epistemology. They are essential to all cognition and belief.
The phrase of global intifada.
Global intifada.
Globalize the intifada.
When you normalize language, like globalize the
Intifada. Free Palestine. We hear that on the streets. We hear that on college campuses.
It has become a call for violence.
From the river to the sea.
From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. That is a very violent statement.
It's a very violent statement.
Okay, sorry, I was going to say now no one will hire me.
Why are we telling you this? Because we in the West are going to have to ask ourselves, what happens when an entire generation sees its priors exploded? How do we deal with hard challenges that depend on trust and collective action, like Brexit or immigration or a pandemic, to say nothing about AI and climate change?
Something that every day for the last 9 months, I've been asking myself, how is it that we can see this and then people with power in this country are lying to us about this reality that we can all see?
That's Simone Zimmerman. She's talking about what an entire generation has been going through these past 2 years. And aside from whatever we think about Israel, Palestine, and Gaza, have we considered what the consequences for our society is going to be in the 2030s and 40s when this generation takes the baton from ours? This is a generation that is being red-pilled, and we described its likely effects in the US and also in Australia in another video in this series. They are angry and frustrated with the state of their democracy, with a political system that no longer responds to their needs. The war, the money, the blank check support, the restrictions on their individual liberties, and most importantly, the horrific images on their screens have all come together as evidence that affirms their suspicions about what they have long believed to be the case, which is that there is something fundamentally wrong with the health of their society and the state of their democracy. In other words, they don't share my generation's priors anymore, and we don't yet know what priors they will find to take their place.
Generals gathered in their masses, just like witches at black masses. Evil minds,
which the antisemitism discourse highlights and unfortunately is becoming associated with it. This is a comment about politics and our democracy. It's not about any specific lobby or interest group. The reality, however, and it's one that we are going to be living with for a long time, is that Israel and the conflation of Zionism and antisemitism brings all this to light for people in a way that other areas in which our politics are dysfunctional don't.
German people have not been prepared for the defeat.
That's exactly what happened to Germany in the 1920s.
Therefore, the only way that he can explain that defeat is by treachery.
Dolchstoßlegende, for those who don't know, means dagger stab legend, or sometimes in English, the stab in the back theory. It was not just a product of antisemitism. It was the product of the convergence of many different threads, every single one of which was necessary but not sufficient. And the most necessary of all was the mass red-pilling of an entire generation of Germans in the 1920s.
That turned us into a sort of time travelers.
you wake up to realizing that so much of the stuff you believed was bullshit propaganda and is all lies.
We are coming to you from our past to tell you about your future.
People I talked to who told me that these things weren't true are now telling me that they are. And that definitely undermined a narrative that I had.
If they're not telling me the truth about this.
And then once people realize that, they go, well, what else have they been lying to me about?
Or if they're reporting this like that, what else is going on?
We have been lied to since the beginning of this country.
It shows the kind of blind spot that we had. And now I'm going to have to rethink a lot of things.
That's Israeli-American and Zionist Shail Bet Ephraim, speaking in July 2024 after Israeli civilians stormed Sde Teman in defense of soldiers accused of rape. If you followed him on social media over the past 2 years, you will have watched what red pilling looks like in real time.
The reason that anti-Semitism is resurgent right now is because we're in a time where people are disoriented, they're disaffected, they're confused, they're shortchanged, and they're looking for an easy answer.
So they're looking for a scapegoat.
Yeah.
That's not the fault of Israel, Zionists, and certainly not Jewish people. But that's not a guarantee of anyone's safety.
This is a real danger when the establishment and the institutions are all caught with their pants down, having sold a bunch of very consequential policies based on lies.
Brand new excerpt from my upcoming book, Original Sin. I'm not sure if you've heard of it, called Original Sin. I'm sure you've heard Original Sin. That's coming out in 3 weeks, 19 days away, in 1 week and 1 day. Just a few days. Comes out Tuesday. You will not believe what we found out.
We all f***ing knew. All of us knew.
Nothing more perfectly illustrates the disconnect between a media establishment thoroughly embedded with power and the reality that ordinary people see than the surreal rollout of anchor Jake Tapper's expose on Joe Biden.
And I wish I'd known what I know now. I would not say I was incurious.
When they read legacy media, I think cable news is in a lot of trouble.
You remember what the New York Times wrote in the editorial? Mamdani should not even have a line on the ballot.
Fox News is, like all cable networks, dying.
Yeah.
Because whether people want to believe it or not, I think most Americans are actually pretty smart.
Nobody gave a damn.
And they have 70-year-old people watching it pretty much exclusively.
The problem is when you lie that aggressively.
The gap between what people can see and hear and read, what politicians are saying and what the mainstream media outlets are saying is so incredibly vast.
And you use my government to do it and all of its armed institutions to do it, then you force me. You're making people radical.
Whatever you think of these people and their politics, on this question, they have their finger on the pulse of the nation.
You know, on the one hand, I'm like, well, you know, maybe some people evolve and they change in their views and maybe they are driven by facts and now they're more inclusive.
It has politicized large numbers of people who weren't particularly political before.
Or is it more sinister and we should just not trust them because they have a very well-documented track record of being pretty batshit? Yeah, it's somewhere on that spectrum. Yeah, I would say.
So I think it's become totemic.
You know, in my day, a New York Times endorsement, it was a very fraught moment.
And privy to the fact that they're not really getting the whole story when they watch traditional media.
The New York Times, who it endorsed, yes, it was a very big moment.
Corrupt mainstream media.
This is CNN.
I would not say I was incurious.
No, nobody gives a shit.
When people decide that institutions they should trust can't be trusted, they look for someone else to trust instead.
And so there's a lot more competition now.
The Al Jazeera effect. There's danger in that. And I think that there are some things that then people jump to conclusions that are
the legacy of anti-Semitism. And it's not that viewpoint is not completely, it doesn't have any validity to it.
Well, then maybe the people with power should do a better job of not lying through their fucking teeth about everything.
Well, how long do we have to learn the lesson that if you try and suppress things and ideas and people through censorship, through punishment, through silencing, through exclusion, you're just going to make them stronger?
They've lost all credibility.
Banging on the chick 'cause I'm a gangster, bitch. I'm gang banging on the strip on some gangster shit.
Can you imagine? Got a bunch of kids to chant "Free, free Palestine," which of course they happily did because these kids don't watch the news.
We're losing the youth of this country. We're losing them on TikTok.
They watch is TikTok, which has a lot of primary sources of Gazan people being bombed by Israel.
The machine doesn't give a fuck about your speech.
The Jews did everything. Everything.
The good with the bad.
I'm called a foreign asset, right? That I'm a foreign lobbyist. They would kill you without even thinking. They would say, rise and kill them first. That's how they think.
You know what I mean? The JFK thing, I had no clue.
They are ruthless. Israel did 9/11, Charlie. Oh, they did. Wow. Why are we in the middle? I served. Why were we in the Middle East? Endless. Go look. Any post I put up, the hatred, the vitriol that's going on. And so...
All about the corruption, the propaganda, they listen to the government, they know it's bullshit.
When you see them genociding and starving to death women and children in Palestine, they're willing to do that to you too.
9/11, apparently.
Did the Holocaust happen? The Holocaust did happen. How many people died? Not 6 million. Do you think they have any affinity with you because we're all American? Absolutely not.
This realization that whatever you believe.
When you turn to people like that because they're the only people seemingly criticizing the US military industrial complex, you're like, I am very confused and have a very uneasy feeling, but I don't know where else to go.
They would rise and kill us first. And who's us? You and your family.
This is all bullshit now.
They will raid your village. They will slit your throat. They will kill the children. They will wipe you out. I appreciate this hearing, Mr. Chairman, but this hearing ain't gonna fix shit.
Of all the consequences of what Ida Buttrose and David Anderson did to Antoinette Lattouf, or of Tony Burke's unfortunate decision to deny a visa to Candace Owens, the most important, we believe, will not be the impact on these women. The most consequential impact, we believe, is the way it undermines confidence in our shared priors, the confidence in our institutions, which my generation considered axiomatic, but which Gen Zs increasingly view as just another in a long series of false assumptions and broken promises about our world. Because if you thought the debates about lockdowns were dysfunctional, just wait till you see what the 2030s will bring.
In Nazi Germany, again, they are having transgender surgeries, underground transgender surgeries. They are promoting homosexuality in schools.
Gaza exposed everything. Now we're seeing the ripple effect.
Right now in Australia, we are talking about anti-Semitism education in our schools.
A Sydney teacher and former TV reality show contestant is being investigated after showing his class videos described as dangerous, anti-Israel and anti-Semitic propaganda. Senior reporter Caroline Marcus has more.
But anti-Semitism education is worthless if a generation one day decides that the educational system can't be trusted.
The University of Sydney has removed a staff member from handling complaints from Jewish students and staff after her pro-Palestinian online activity was exposed. Caroline Marcus has this exclusive report.
Students later discovered the manager posting anti-Israel content online.
From anti-Semitic organizations like Jewish Voice for Peace, which Ms. Marcus presents without any hint of irony. Before running with that story, however, her bosses at News Corp might have taken the time to ask themselves what the long-term implications will be of saying the things that they say.
Don't you know, we're talking about a revolution.
Because long before this generation of students and graduate students diffuse through society and rise into positions of influence and authority, they're going to do something that's going to change the national debate. They'll get jobs. They'll join graduate programs in banks and professional services firms and other companies. They'll meet the rest of society as employees, mentees, and colleagues. Over the next few years, in conversations in lunchrooms, in breakout rooms, or basketball courses, and golf courses, churches, and thousands of other places in between, the vast majority who have no connection to campus protests, for example, are going to hear their first-hand accounts of what campus life was like and compare that to the story the media has been telling them. And in particular, to the story women like Ms. Marcus has been telling them here in Australia.
None of the people that were talking about Mahmoud or talking about the encampments were at the encampment.
There was a very concerted effort by the media to portray things a certain way and refuse to discuss Gaza.
During those 2 weeks, Columbia's campus was probably the most photographed and videographed square mile on the planet.
Shortly after October 7th, the ADL wrote a letter to nearly 200 universities.
The politicians and the media have been trying to portray the Columbia encampment as this den of violence and anti-Semitism. But if this was the case, how is there not a single video of Jewish students being attacked?
I want to know that City Hall will not host organizations that have ties to terror groups.
You said that the group Students for Justice in Palestine should be investigated for materially supporting a foreign terrorist organization, which can carry a penalty of up to 20 years in prison.
In our film, we interview a university whistleblower who suggests a lot of these incidents were concocted or inflated by pro-Israel students on campus.
Anti-Semitism workshop that the Hillel at Duke University put on, basically pro-Israel propaganda.
At Yale, and I'm sure this is true of Columbia, there were a very large number of Jewish students in those protests.
Are you saying that you believe those materials came from Hamas directly?
I don't know where it was coming from, so I'm not making this up.
It's like I was there, I would sit there in my tent, scrolling through my phone, hearing people talk about how Columbia is this cesspool of anti-Semitism, and then I look 10 feet in front of me, there's a Passover Seder happening.
Yeah.
Shabbat services. It's so ridiculous, this is why you should see the film.
And there were plenty of students. It was tied for the largest identity group in the protests. So why don't they count as Jewish?
Mamdani has been campaigning with Khalil.
What you're talking about, what actually happened on campuses, and the accusation of material support for terrorism.
What's so ironic about his obsession with the mythical spitting incident is that there are loads of videos of people who support Israel attacking the pro-Palestine students, telling them they should be raped, they should be killed, beating them bloody, and attempting to murder them, like they did at UCLA.
There were a tremendous number of Arab students who felt incredibly threatened at Columbia. What about them?
As they say, every accusation is a confession.
You have to be in direct coordination with a terrorist entity. Did you believe that that's what was happening?
Hans, have courage, my friend. Yeah. Hans, I've just noticed something.
These communists are all cowards.
They've got skulls on them. Have you noticed?
Why are you even here? You're just another dummy, right? Another stupid guy. No fucking brain, right? Just an idiot. Hello, guys. This is one of the terrorists. Look at this kitty. You don't even know why you're here, huh? You don't even know why you're here.
I really can't think of anything worse as a symbol than a skull. What do skulls make you think of?
A whole number of Jewish students of Columbia have not only spoken up in defense of those students and talked about their personal relationships and how much they admired them and how well they got to them. A number of Jewish students even chained themselves to the gate of Columbia in their support of Mahmoud Khalil.
We no longer need to give validity to these arguments. It's time to call it what it is, which is a lie, a tool of manipulation that's meant to promote a particular political agenda.
It's completely farcical to imply that in any way, like, Jewish people were being persecuted.
I have never felt more proud to be Jewish than when I was pushing our university to divest from genocide.
I just can't think of anything good about a skull. Death, cannibals, beheading.
Get out of here! This is a terrorist! This is a terrorist!
Where's the ally?
Oh, you haven't been listening to Allied propaganda. Of course they're going to say we're the bad guys.
But they didn't get to design our uniforms. And their symbols are all, quite nice.
Slavery is very contagious. We kind of watched Columbia in awe, and we knew we were next.
It was Assange who said, never let anyone tell you who your enemy is. Don't let them tell you that people who are protesting a genocide are your enemy.
There were other Jewish students at Columbia who were participants in those actions with them and saw them as friends. And, it's just...
The enemies are the ones who are making money off of selling 2,000 pound JDAMs to a racist ethno-state.
And not only has there not been a culture of anti-Semitism, I would say there has been actually a celebration of Jewish identity and support for Jewish involvement in these movements and a real desire to learn about Jewish history. And so I've been incredibly proud and moved by the ways that pro-Palestinian activists have welcomed Jewish students and have wanted to work with us, faculty as well. And so to me, that is just the complete antithesis of a culture of anti-Semitism within these campus movements.
What's going to happen when tens of millions of Americans hear from recent graduates over the next few years a story about campus protests that's different from the story the media has put into their heads?
Any young American is going to think, remember what happened when they took down the world's greatest university system on behalf of Jewish safety?
We can arrest them, we can deport them, and we can cut off their funding, and that is exactly what we are seeing the Trump administration put into action.
And now perhaps the Albanese government as well.
Do you think that there are cultural events in Australia that should be cancelled?
When we started a whole series of initiatives in relation to the racism and anti-Semitism that was apparent with the Adelaide Writers' Festival.
For featuring the views of people who hold very strong views about the actions of the State of Israel and the future of the State of Palestine.
All the horrific actions of Louise Adler.
With 9 Palestinian writers and, of course, no Israeli writers.
In inviting overtly anti-Semitic speakers to appear at that festival.
No, I'm not saying that at all. I'm not talking about anything being cancelled. We dealt with sponsors and presenters, but also we wanted to have people on the ground demonstrating, holding up signs.
That's despite the fact that, as we're sure Ms. Siegel and her colleagues at the ECAJ would agree, a writers' festival like Adelaide Week is a place for
reflection, debate, and discussion.
That's Daniel Aghion, president of the ECAJ, whose other leaders we've already heard from in this series, including Ms. Siegel herself, who has been a longtime member of the ECAJ board.
It is not a place for mindless intimidation.
The thing is, he wasn't talking about Adelaide Week. He was talking about a presentation to be given by Israeli politician Ayelet Shaked, as we discussed in another video, whose visa was ultimately denied due to genocidal statements she is alleged to have made or endorsed. As we discussed in that video, whatever you think of Ms. Shaked, and we don't know the woman nor make any representations about her character, surely any reasonable person would agree that if it is legitimate to protest an award-winning writer and poet,
overtly anti-Semitic speakers
like Mohammed El-Kurd, and by the way, we think it is certainly reasonable to protest a presentation given by a political figure like Ms. Shaked, even if the talk was given inside a synagogue.
You're coming to somebody's backyard, to their place of worship.
Yes, a synagogue.
We dealt with sponsors and presenters, but also we wanted to have people on the ground demonstrating, holding up signs. We found the Jewish students in Adelaide, and I'm sure you'll agree with this, very nervous about coming out.
But that wasn't the only thing that struck us about this story. Why didn't Miss Siegel go? Or members of her family? She's a pretty good lawyer, and as I can personally attest, having observed her in action in the boardroom, knows how to construct an argument. What stopped Ms. Siegel from going to that festival and giving that anti-Semite a run from his money? Listened to his presentation and asked him any question she'd like, exposing him to the world and to Australians for his racism. What about Mr. Chester, partner at ABL? Presumably he's good at constructing arguments. Or Mr. Aghion, Mr. Rivkin, or anybody. Any of the other lawyers, barristers, and KCs that we imagine must have been in that room. What about
Lawyers for Israel?
The KC and officer of the Order of Australia who led the campaign against Antoinette Lattouf.
Judge suppressed for 10 years the names and addresses of a group called Lawyers for Israel,
whose name is suppressed.
Remember that Captain Darling and I are behind you.
The judge satisfied that if their identities were known, they would be subject to vilification and harassment.
We dealt with sponsors and presenters.
About 35 miles behind.
But also we wanted to have people on the ground demonstrating, holding up signs.
Out of respect for the court, we'll simply call this person the world's most moral KC. Why didn't the world's most moral KC and officer of the Order of Australia go to Adelaide and challenge the alleged anti-Semitic Mohammed El-Kurd, as well as other
overtly anti-Semitic speakers
on their anti-Semitism? If there is one person in Australia who should be good at engaging in the free marketplace of ideas, it would be the world's most moral KC. We'll have more to say about the chicken hawkery of the Latoufe Nine, and especially of the world's most moral KC, in the final video of this series, as well as the reality that supporters of Israel are largely withdrawing from the marketplace of ideas, which we discussed in one of the first videos of this series.
This will go down in history books. The history of this era will say that Jewish people were the sledgehammer for fascism.
Not all Jewish people.
There are two things that are true simultaneously. One is I see things that alarm me about anti-Semitism. The second is that many of our colleges are great places to be Jewish and better places to be Jewish than a lot of other parts of our society.
If you look at scholars who study anti-Semitism, while anti-Zionist views on college campuses were considerably higher than they were among Americans as a whole, actually anti-Semitic views were lower.
They are both talking about the University of Chicago survey that got much less attention than it deserved. It's specific to American college students, but we suspect the results in Australia would be the same, which show quite clearly that traditionally defined anti-Semitic attitudes, these are different from anti-Semitism as defined in IRA, are lower in university students than they are in the broader population. The same is also true for Islamophobic attitudes. However, anti-Zionism is much higher.
There are other people who urge, well, are there other ways that you can accommodate the government in some way or bend to the government's policy preferences? I think that's the wrong way, at least for an academic institution, to be thinking about what its responsibilities are. We need to be true to our mission and we need to be true to our values. And I think that's a way of being true to the broader American mission.
That's Princeton President Chris Eisgruber, and he is probably unique in the way he's standing alone resisting the assault on academic freedom in America, as well as in the way he unapologetically sought to balance safety for Jewish people on campus at Princeton with the right of protest and speech.
Naftali Bennett, no amount of speeches or attempts to resolve your public image will ever absolve you of the Palestinian blood that has forever stained your hands.
It's high risk, of course, and may cost him his career. But if he succeeds, we may find this as reputation defining for Princeton as its decision to provide sanctuary for some of the most important Jewish scholars fleeing Europe 100 years ago. That decision paid reputational dividends for Princeton, which it enjoys to this very day. We hope that 100 years from now, people remember that it was Princeton that took the first and most public stand against the closing of the American mind. In any case, while that may be great for Princeton as an institution, for American society, ordinary Americans will add the memory of this episode to the long list of reasons to believe their media, just like their politicians, can't be trusted. The same is going to happen in Australia. For better or for worse, millions of Australians who don't have personal or family connection to campus life will meet students who will testify about the reality of campus experience in Australia.
What is your message here to Australian vice-chancellors and indeed school principals?
We've been engaging with UNSW at other universities for a long time to alert them to what's happening.
It is my view, having conducted a number of interviews, that there is systemic embedded anti-Semitism within our university campuses.
Uphold the principles which underpin the foundations of your institutions.
And if they don't?
If they don't deserve to be in their jobs.
Academics inciting further hatred against the Jewish student population.
And there is embedded anti-Semitism amongst many academics.
If we think about the Chicago survey we mentioned earlier, it's not hard to imagine Ms. Siegel, who has said quite explicitly that she views things such as anti-Zionism, the characterization of Israel as a settler colony, an apartheid state, or endorsement of BDS. She views all those things as anti-Semitism. It's right there in the IRA definition itself. It's not hard to imagine someone like Ms. Siegel having a conversation with some university lecturer who disagrees and feeling like he or she just isn't listening. And not to play amateur psychologist, but it must be exasperating for someone of Ms. Siegel's wealth and status. She's been a leading corporate lawyer, executive, and director longer than many academics have even been alive. To have some arrogant professor of critical theory tell her why she's wrong and why he or she rejects her premise.
And I also believe that the universities themselves do not understand or appreciate the unique, embedded, and normalised extent of this particular type of racism.
Right now, very few Australians have the information or capacity to agree or disagree with the anti-Semitism envoy's assessment of the reality of campus life, which, to be fair, is entirely consistent with that being told by news media organizations across the political spectrum.
Well, tensions at universities across Australia and the US are at boiling point. Chancellors are accused of failing to find the right balance between freedom of speech and student safety. What do you think?
Well, I think we need a lot more tolerance from the protesters. Everybody's got the right to peaceful protest, but people are throwing a lot of labels around.
We agree. People should not throw labels around. Hear, hear. May we ask, though, what kind of labels does Mr. Swan have in mind? Because he didn't specify in that interview. Were they labels like these?
Noisy and aggressive,
despicable,
cultural Marxists,
pro-Hamas
jihadists,
turning their back on civilization,
poorly integrated migrants,
flirting with ideas of barbarism,
shit Jews,
on the side of the rapists and the torturers and the killers and the kidnappers.
A whole bunch of lowlives who need to get jobs. It's a reality.
Because if we're being real here,
but let's keep it real, okay?
I don't think I've ever heard any serious supporter of Palestinian rights ever talk about fellow Australians, or even Israelis for that matter, in the kind of language that one can hear every day directed at them.
I know a lot of people caricature a lot of these people who care about Palestinian rights and freedom as like being anti-Semitic.
Not by some rando in the street, because you can always find some anonymous person in the street who will say or do something offensive, especially if they are paid to do it.
But to be honest, the vast majority of people I meet, they strike me as like the kind of people who would have stuck up for us when we were in trouble.
I've never heard any serious protester, or serious critic of Israel use the kind of ugly language to characterize fellow Australians, I'm not talking about Israelis, but fellow Australians, that the most prominent leaders of our media, politics, and society do to protesters and critics of Israel on a daily basis.
The kind of people who are willing to risk something because when they see people suffering and being abused, they act. And those are the people who I want to be around.
Yet it's journalists like Mary Kostakidis who gets hauled to court being accused of vilifying her fellow Australians.
Or you can call for a ceasefire and not be pro-Hamas.
You'd think so, Mr. Swan, would you? It turns out you can't, at least in Australia.
They've been on the streets holding what are essentially pro-Hamas marches.
You can't ask the press to ensure balanced reporting without being a signatory to slaughter.
It's still so easy for people who support unconditional support of what Israel's doing to go on the media and say things that are palpably, obviously untrue and not be challenged on these things.
And in fact, can't support the Palestinian cause in any way, according to conservative British columnist Melanie Phillips, without facilitating Jew hate. So, that's what we would call a conundrum, wouldn't you say, Mr. Swan?
We just need a bit more respect.
By respect, Mr. Swan, we presume you mean mutual consideration and regard for each other's worth, rights, and dignity. Is that what you mean?
Yes, that's exactly what I mean.
But you can never satisfy these jihadists.
As we said earlier in this video, that's 20-year Labour MP Michael Danby. And by jihadist, he means fellow members of his party who disagree with him about Israel, which in his defense is a very common way for people who aren't extremists to characterize those with whom they disagree.
This is ludicrous.
What do you think? I think we should keep it real.
Yeah, I think respect's the big thing, isn't it? The University of Sydney boss, Mark Scott, come out and say that Jewish students have to kind of tough it out and feel uncomfortable.
Well, no one should feel that they're not safe.
When freedom of speech crosses the line into bullying and to victimisation, then that's not freedom of speech.
Wish that these morons at Glastonbury ever got a glimpse of what the innocent young people at the Nova Festival saw on the morning of October the 7th.
Mark Scott says Jewish students will have to tough it out, being uncomfortable with the anti-Israeli slogans there. What do you make of that quickly?
What we make of that, Mr. Stefanovic, is that this doesn't sound like the sort of thing Mark Scott would say.
Jewish students have to kind of tough it out and feel uncomfortable.
So it struck us as unusual that it was said twice on this show. Same choice of words, as if it were a direct quote. So we looked it up, and it turns out that those words, just have to tough it out, were pulled from the first paragraph of the Daily Telegraph's story on Scott, which paraphrased his actual words, which are these: "We need to separate criticism of Israel and Israel's conduct," which I don't think is automatically anti-Semitic. I understand encampments are uncomfortable for some Jewish students and staff, and that they would prefer they not be here. I'm sympathetic to that view. But that is how places committed to free speech operate. People will be upset from time to time by things they hear and by divergent views, but as a university, we need to manage that. Sounds different, doesn't it? We don't think that's an accident, especially since we saw that same formulation, those same words, repeated in other channels as well.
Jewish students have to kind of tough it out and feel uncomfortable.
Mark Scott says Jewish students will have to tough it out, being uncomfortable.
Why would someone do that? We can't know.
They don't care about whether it's true or not.
But just as with the story of the Great Synagogue in Sydney, the Caulfield protests, the story of Jenny Leong, which we covered in our first video, all we can do is point out to you what actually happened and let you draw your own conclusions. Because by deceptively suggesting that Mark Scott used those words,
we'll have to tough it out, being uncomfortable,
Mr. Stefanovich, as well as News Corp, have changed the story. They turned a story about the balance between comfort and speech.
No, I don't think people should feel safe intellectually. Hear things that you disagree with and fight back.
Between emotional safety and freedom from the distress of cognitive dissonance on the one hand, and freedom of inquiry, scrutiny of evidence, and disputation of moral questions on the other hand. They took that story and turned it into a story about an arrogant, out-of-touch vice-chancellor demonstrating contemptuous indifference to the well-being of his students.
Mark Scott says Jewish students will have to tough it out, being uncomfortable with the anti-Israeli slogans there.
Jewish students have to kind of tough it out and feel uncomfortable.
In other words, instead of a story about campus speech, they turned it into a story about Mark Scott.
Turn the subject to the accusers, not to the accused.
Sound familiar?
So the move is always to basically to turn attention away from what's actually happening and turn it into a question about the motivations of the person.
They don't care about whether it's true or not.
It's the same way that Jenny Leong suggested, that we need to be aware of and call out the many ways pro-Israel organizations exercise influence across Australia, just as their counterparts do in the US.
It's all about the Benjamins. Is that like, it's not like with the Nuremberg Protocols. It's talking about how a lobbying organization uses money.
Got turned into a story about a reference to a Nazi cartoon, which, as we demonstrated in the first video, she never made. And which, in an even greater irony, which highlights how sloppy and lazy much of this narrative has become, wasn't even itself about Jews. That's Churchill's face in the cartoon. And those tentacles, that's the British Empire scouring the earth for oil. We explain all that in our first video if anyone is curious. It's the way Simon Holmes' Court's quip about John Howard turned into a story about his alleged antisemitism, or at the very least, his insensitivity to the feelings of Australia's Holocaust survivors. Same play, same players. And before you let anyone gaslight you into thinking that even talking about this is somehow an anti-Semitic, what's the word?
Trope, they call it. I hate that word. It's just a stupid word.
Yes, that's it. It's not a trope, because it has nothing to do with Semitism, or Zionism, or Israel. It's just propaganda. It's how propaganda works. We as citizens just need to do a better job of spotting it. Unfortunately, propaganda often works, even in free societies. Mark Scott, recognizing that the story is now about him, decided he had no choice but to agree to a definition of anti-Semitism with which he clearly disagrees. Because if he didn't, he would not have spent 2 years resisting one of the most powerful interest groups in Australia.
And we've had a pledge that the IRA definition will be adopted as policy in the new year, which is a welcome thing.
So congratulations to Ms. Siegel and her allies. Respect. This is how power is exercised in our democracy.
If it serves the cause, even if it's not true, it's true.
You have to know that that's the goal.
The thing is, just as in America, eventually Australians will hear a different perspective.
I think it's disgraceful, Carla. I just don't know that we would tolerate this for any other segment of our society. Tall people, short people, we wouldn't tolerate the segregation and the anti-Semitic conduct that we're seeing at the moment. It's targeted against people of Jewish faith. They have no connection whatsoever with, with the leadership in Israel. And this is, I mean, as you go around the Jewish community, people now are right to point out that they've got armed guards at schools and preschools.
Jewish students have just have to kind of tough it out and feel uncomfortable.
Mark Scott says Jewish students will have to tough it out, being uncomfortable with the anti-Israeli slogans there.
But this is the 1930s over again, and it is targeted at people because of their heritage or their faith.
Over the next 5 years, 1.5 million students will graduate in Australia. And assuming half the foreign students stay, as is usually the case, that means 1.2 million young people will join Australian society and will tell fellow Australians what life on campus was really like.
I think there's two different issues. One is anti-Semitism. So I've had very many conversations with other staff members. I myself has gone to the encampment and been welcomed there.
They'll be telling their story directly, not via Mr. Stefanovich, and when they do, Australians will compare their story with what men like Mr. Stefanovich, Mr. Dutton, Mr. Swan, and everyone on Sky News told them.
Others feel uncomfortable, but my strong opinion is that's a political discomfort. That's not because there's any racism. These are peaceful encampments.
Depending on how consistent those stories were, they might become angry. Not with Israel, not with Bibi Netanyahu, not with the IDF, not with extremist settlers. None of those people are responsible for restrictions of speech on campus and in our streets. They'll be angry with someone here in Australia, someone whom we at least would never want to be, and whom we would never want our children to be. That's going to be especially true as the next generation, whether we like it or not, grapples with the question of what exactly we are going to call whatever it is we did to Gaza.
The majority of them have problems with Jews right now, which is terrifying to me.
The United States is effectively complicit in a genocide.
They say, Israel is committing genocide against Palestine. You're like, no, it's not.
The invocation of Amalek by Mr. Netanyahu, the claim by President Herzog that there are no civilians in Gaza.
Genocide is something different.
The order issued by Defense Minister Gallant, no food, water, fuel, or electricity will be admitted to Gaza.
You could say there's civilian casualties in some ways that the war is being promulgated. That's really suboptimal.
That was an outright genocidal plan.
When there is a war, it doesn't matter who your enemy is. You need to destroy their offspring to prevent them from creating more offspring.
That's really suboptimal.
You can argue about this.
Yeah, you can argue about that, but it's not genocide.
Oh, where have you been, my blue-eyed son?
Dr. Mark Perlmutter, an orthopedic surgeon from North Carolina and vice president of the International College of Surgeons, volunteered in Gaza.
The prosecutor of the International Criminal Court has shamefully accused Israel of deliberately starving the people of Gaza.
Our assessment is very clearly that the Israeli authorities are using starvation as a weapon of war in Gaza.
How many kids are in danger of starvation in Gaza? All of them. Absolutely all of them.
It's a double war crime.
What prompted your shift from previously defending Israel's actions in Gaza?
You have collective punishment of the civilian population, and you specifically have the use of starvation as a weapon of war.
To now condemning them as war crime.
This is utter, complete nonsense. It's a complete fabrication.
Well, I think they're being as dishonest as Netanyahu was when he spoke to our Congress.
So that there will be as many people across the world that will know that there are other voices in Israel.
Israel has enabled more than 40,000 aid trucks to enter Gaza.
Dozens of miles, we saw 18-wheelers parked bumper to bumper, engines off outside of Gaza. Food or healthcare could not get in.
There were some roadblocks that needed to be overcome, and we had worked to overcome those, and we had seen Israel take steps to allow humanitarian assistance in.
When the President of the United States has to ask Israel to allow assistance in, that effectively is an admission that Israel is blocking humanitarian assistance.
The ICC prosecutor accuses Israel of deliberately targeting civilians.
Is it mostly children? Almost exclusively children. I've never seen that before. I've seen more incinerated children than I've ever seen in my entire life combined. I've seen more shredded children in just the first week.
Well, we heard so many lies in the last week from so many leaders.
But I never, ever believe Israeli figures.
How do you think these people died?
In gun battles with Israel.
Why do you think some of the bodies were found with ties around their hands?
Well, because we probably arrested the terrorists.
And then killed them.
It's a little bit difficult to accuse another group of being a death cult when the group you're supporting has killed so many more people than them.
I've been in the government too long to know that the Israelis are patent liars.
Israel is in a war against Hamas, not the Palestinian people. And it's a real tragedy that so many innocent lives have been lost.
Prime Minister Netanyahu is not at war with Yahya Sinwar. He is not at war with Hamas. Israel is at war with the Palestinian people.
It bothers me the moral equivalency that goes on in the American media. I don't think Israelis would ever purposely kill babies.
And then there's sniper bullets. I have children that were shot twice.
I think the Israelis have always had the moral high ground, and I think they still do.
There's so much attention on Israel. They don't want to commit war crimes. They really don't. It's very important for them to be as meticulous as possible to not commit war crimes.
Wait, you're saying that children in Gaza are being shot by snipers?
Definitively. I have 2 children that I have photographs of that were shot so perfectly in the chest I couldn't put my stethoscope over their heart more accurately, and directly on the side of the head in the same child.
Do we know that,
sadly,
though, Deborah?
Do we know that? Well, I mean, I listen to the IDF spokesman.
You can't believe anything that comes out of Jerusalem.
Hamas does everything in its power to put Palestinian civilians in harm's way.
Let me say that again. They are liars.
For Hamas, the same suffering is a strategy. They want to see suffering in Gaza.
I just wonder how much sympathy can be extended to the Palestinian people.
When I met this little boy, he had tank shell in him. Now, there's only one side to this fight that has tanks.
The CT that I shared on Ag.
No toddler gets shot twice by mistake by the world's best sniper. And they're dead center shots.
They even shoot their own people
on a daily basis, but they would come in with a pattern of wounds. So one day there would be one pattern. Next day, another pattern, another body part. Next day, another body part. Pattern. Target practice involving children.
These were very calculated, single-shot wounds.
On particular days, they'll see different body parts targeted.
But I've had, when I was there in August, I had 18 cases, documented cases of children that came in with gunshots to the head or to the neck, to the abdomen, to the chest.
More than 20 doctors recently in Gaza also told Sunday morning about gunshot wounds to children.
So on one day, there'll all be abdominal gunshot wounds. On another day, there'll all be head gunshot wounds.
One American doctor told us he even reviewed CT scans to confirm what he saw because he, quote, didn't believe that this many children could be admitted to a single hospital with gunshot wounds to the head.
That's really suboptimal.
You can argue about this.
Yeah, you can argue about that.
This is an ongoing thing that's been happening even before October 7th, and it happens in the West Bank as well.
Last Saturday, there were 4 young teenage boys with gunshot wounds to their testicles.
We are seeing those patterns of sniper wounds and targeting and targeting of kids and of the groins.
But it's not genocide.
Maybe we just expel all the Palestinians from Gaza. A lot of Israelis, including people I know personally.
For us, the suffering in Gaza, it's a tragedy.
No one actually gives a shit. 0 people in Israel care if this baby in Gaza gets polio. There'll be like 20 people who care, and they're all wearing Meretz shirts. Fuck them.
For Israel, every civilian death is a tragedy.
Can't help but think it's nice to know.
Who had these thoughts somewhere in the back of the mind and always told themselves, you cannot say that.
You're dancing in a concert while hundreds of thousands of Gazans are, homeless.
It's done with this kind of sadistic glee.
Makes it even better. Yeah. More enjoyable concert.
And it's pointless to say that because it's unrealistic.
It would require a novelist.
If only they put the live video footage of Gaza.
The moment it came out of the mouth of the US president, yes, we can do that.
To capture the sadism of this, I can't find the word monstrous, pathological. It's very hard to capture it.
That's what people don't understand. Look, I know that you guys might be appalled by this, some of the listeners.
The support for these kinds of things, I don't know the exact numbers.
But seriously, this is how Israelis feel. people enjoy knowing that they are suffering.
Today, they're trying to block vital food aid getting to Gaza.
Are you not concerned that by blocking the aid going to Gaza, a lot of Palestinians who are already suffering are starving?
Well, can they really be excused for blame for what they've helped bring on themselves? Or am I being unfair?
No, I don't think they can be.
Former Prime Minister Ehud Olmert, he says Israel is committing war crimes.
Prime Minister Olmert is lying.
They are inveterate liars.
And there's only one reason why government like Israel in this kind of situation doesn't want journalists on the ground operating independently, because they know they're doing stuff they don't want the world to see.
It's a mousetrap. You have these famished, starving people. You promise them a little cheese. They're like the showers in Auschwitz. You promise them a little cheese, and then when you get there, the Israeli army shoots them. Gleefully. You know, people don't want to hear that.
Because when it suits Israel, no problem. In you come.
There is no famine in Gaza. There is a famine of the truth.
That's real starvation stuff. I see it. And you can't fake that.
And Israel will not stop telling it.
Blaming us for starvation and other lies. And I call the UN, stop with the lies. The UN is not distributing the aid to the people of Gaza.
Queers for Palestine.
Did you hear their sister organization, Blacks for the KKK?
The emotional wounds. How can you measure that? I can't measure my own.
It's almost as if a game is being played that.
How do you be an orphan and watching your family, melted in front of you and shredded in front of you?
I don't think it's a genocide. That's a legal definition.
We have two goals for this war.
I don't have the dictionary in front of me.
I have it here.
How do you fix that? Ever fix that?
It's a legal definition.
55% of Israelis believe Netanyahu's main goal is staying in power.
With the war in Gaza continuing because Hamas is still refusing to accept the ceasefire deal.
The hostages will be back home and Hamas will not be in power in Gaza.
Not winning, not returning the hostages.
Any of the following acts committed with intent to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group, such as killing members of the group, causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or part, imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group, forcibly transferring children of the group to another group.
Well, so in fairness, I don't have that definition in front of me, and I haven't read it like you have before this. But what I'll simply say is that I don't believe the Israeli government is committing genocide.
Something that every day for the last 9 months I've been asking myself, how is it that we can see this and then people with power in this country are lying to us about this reality that we can all see?
If that's not challenging enough, once we decide on what exactly it is we did to Gaza, we'll then have to confront an even harder question. The question of our complicity.
If you are a young person, you open up your phone and all you see is dead Gaza baby, dead Gaza baby, dead Gaza baby, Diddy, dead Gaza baby, dead Gaza baby.
This is emblematic of a broken mainstream media environment. And that broken mainstream media environment is absolutely connected to the fact that the United States continues to send the weapons.
Is much worse than lack of solidarity.
That slaughter and starve people in Gaza.
This is about Iran.
This is complicity.
Are you coming to the tree? They strung up a man, they say, who murdered 3.
Israel said UNRWA was Hamas, and the next day, the entire world defunds UNRWA.
Yes. Yeah.
And we have a famine. And then a year later, they're like, oh, shucks, gee, this famine's awfully bad.
What would you say to someone whose very belief in God and whose belief in Judaism had been brought into question by what Israel is doing in Gaza and the West Bank?
No, this will be the new Judaism, and maybe the only Judaism.
It's a very painful
Question.
When this war is over and every photographer in the world and journalist crawls over Gaza and you really see the Dresden-esque impact there.
People look at this and they see a state that is both vulnerable and genocidal.
I think it's going to be a bad day for Israel and a bad day for world Jewry.
This is Judaism's failure itself.
That is not a clever place to find yourself.
One student tells me, for me as a liberal Jew, it will be better if Israel doesn't exist.
My grandchildren will grow up in a world where they will learn what it is to be Jewish in a world where the Jewish state is a pariah state.
Then I am not responsible for all these awful crimes.
You could say there's civilian casualties in some ways that the war is being promulgated. That's really suboptimal.
You can argue about that.
Yeah, you can argue about that, but it's not genocide.
It's not just Israel that will have a reckoning. It's us. Us in the West, the US, Britain, Australia. We who were complicit and made all this possible.
The Biden position, which is not really a position. It's a cop-out. I mean, the Biden position is a nonsense.
Is the United States complicit in those war crimes?
100%. It's not a blank check. You don't get to do anything to combat terrorism.
By the US not adhering to its own laws.
Yes.
I said, but Bibi, I said, you can't be carpet bombing these communities. And he said to me, well, you did it. You dropped a nuclear weapon. You killed thousands of innocent people. I said, but that's why we came up with the UN.
This is emblematic of a broken mainstream media environment. And
the whitewashing performed by the American and Western European legacy media
is absolutely connected to the fact that the United States continues to send the weapons that slaughter and starve people in Gaza.
The United States is complicit in a genocide.
We, the United States, are complicit. We are involved, hand in hand, in the atrocities and the genocide that is currently undergoing in Gaza.
Is directly responsible for 100% of the 100,000 kids that are acknowledged to be dead or which have yet to be found because they're buried under the rubble.
Silence is complicity. And in the face of terror, we cannot be quiet.
All of us are complicit to some degree.
You've now recognised in the last week or so that Israel is clearly breaching international law. Why haven't you imposed sanctions on the broader Israeli government?
What we haven't done is go for slogans, frankly. Which is the sanction that you would like?
Every single diplomatic, military, and economic measure to stop Israel should be on the table.
Eyes wide shut, but they know. Buried alive by the lies in their soul.
End the arms trade, sanction Israel, tear up the Elbit contract, expel the Israeli ambassador.
Slogans.
What are you talking about?
And what we are about is meaningful action.
So to Albanese and to Minns, no matter how many of us you drag into courtrooms or hospital beds or surveillance databases, we won't stop. You should be afraid of our movement because we are not afraid of you.
2 pounds shy of a bomb. I'm 1 shade short of alarm.
You can send your cowardly police thugs to beat us up and punch us in the face at protests, and we still will not be afraid of you. Palestine will be free, every inch of it, from the river to the sea.
666 if you threaten my development. Now see your wise man learns from your mistakes and lets the blunders of his brother serve to fill his plate. So best be on your way before the tidal wave breaks, cause you don't wanna come to meet the reaper that awaits.
And what was considered the most forward-thinking, the most accomplished, one of the most cultured countries in all of Europe, in the heart of Christian Europe, to do this kind of thing. If that's possible, anything is possible.
I worry because it seems that to some degree there are people who are so fixated, perhaps so biased, that they will go to any lengths to continue the philosophy of expulsion.
You know, what you should have is they should go to pro-Hamas countries. Qatar, Iran, you know, if you send them there, Turkey, those are pro-Hamas countries. That's where they should go.
They're not able to get into Egypt. How are you supposed to even make it to Qatar at this point?
Isn't that telling?
I just wonder how much
sympathy can be extended to the Palestinian people. They've not only harboured Hamas, they've voted for them, they've supported them.
Yeah, well,
can they really be excused for blame for what they've helped bring on themselves? Or am I being unfair?
No, I don't think they can be.
There is a certain degree of complicity with many of the people of Gaza. Now, does that mean that they deserve to die, as she stated? No, of course not. But it's not the same thing as being innocent either.
Israel is the most wonderful country in the world, the most remarkable. I can prove it on every level.
People really seem to care when non-Muslims kill Muslims, and they really, really care when Jews kill Muslims, right? That's the thing that is just, PR plutonium in this world. When you have a group of people or a wider culture that speaks casually of genocide and its aspiration to commit it, we should take them seriously. Right. We should never assume that people are bluffing when they say they want to eradicate a whole population.
If you had a population in the state that it is described by our opponents and an army of the status and power that we know Israel is, it would take a matter of days to complete that genocide.
Of those deaths, they say more than 14,000 are children. UNICEF says the death toll is likely much higher.
Well, an investigation by the Israeli newspaper Haaretz says Israeli soldiers were ordered to shoot at unarmed Gazans waiting for humanitarian aid.
These are Hamas gunmen firing on their own people, Christian.
You don't know that.
Why they're doing that?
There's no evidence for that.
The Israeli tanks, guns, and weapons from all kinds started firing on the crowd.
In Gaza, it is at the same time slapping billions in public money to arms companies and their shareholders.
A strong and wonderful nation, our fighting front line in the Middle East. Anyone can see it.
We need to remember that Israel is not targeting civilians.
The Israelis treat the lives of Palestinians much better than Hamas do.
That's a really important point that's overlooked. Just brush aside.
The good of the world is certainly more represented by Israel than it is by other countries in the Middle East.
This is the type of people that don't care about their own people.
Effectively, they teach a genocidal hate to children in schools. Right, there's just a ghastly culture here of religiously inspired hatred that we have to figure out how to perform an exorcism on, right? I mean, there's just no way that this can be maintained and we can expect to arrive at anything like a lasting peace for, in the Middle East.
The Nazis had sufficient sense of shame to try and hide what they were doing when they were gassing the Jews and shooting them, dropping them into trenches. Now we're prepared to side with people who don't even have a sense of shame about the butchering of women and children.
Throughout the whole thing, the Hamas fighters are in a state of utter elation. We have an awful lot of predominantly Muslims in Australia, Britain, Europe, America, who like what I've just described, and they'd like to do it to the 7 to 8 million Israelis.
And the fact that we're sending in our best and brightest to fight in booby-trapped alleys, in tunnels, to save civilian life, shows how absolutely untenable this notion of genocide is.
Dr. Perlmutter, I know that you treated a local healthcare worker by the name of Tamer. Can you tell us a little bit about him?
Terrorism means deliberately targeting civilians.
It's not true. This rhetoric about civilians not aware, not involved, it's absolutely not true.
He was starved, tortured, totally abused, received no medical care, and initially shot when he didn't have to be shot for doing his job delivering health care.
When an Israeli sniper shoots an old lady with a cane trying to get into a hospital for her chemotherapy treatment, isn't that terrorism?
And suddenly, the Palestinians became the victims of the Jews. Suddenly, on every campus, it's a leftist cause.
I'm a Jew of the left. I edited a paper that was considered to be left of center.
Suddenly, the Palestinians are the leftist cause.
This business that Zionism is just evil. It's now widespread in sections of the left. It's just a truism. Zionism is evil. Israel has to be wiped out.
Many emerge from detention traumatized.
See them in the hospitals when the children just collapse and they come in and they're skeletal.
There's a chapter in the book about fear and about the idea of what that word means. Because one morning I woke up and I found an audio recording of a Palestinian girl begging for her life before the car she was in was shot at least 355 times by Israeli soldiers. And then I read a column from a columnist who was scared about protesters at college campuses.
Will you hide me? Like, if it comes to that, will you hide me and my family?
And I can't use the word fear to describe both of those situations. If that word can be used to encompass the entirety of that spectrum, that word has no meaning at all.
The Israelis treat the lives of Palestinians much better than Hamas do.
That's a really important point that's overlooked. Just brushed aside.
I support Israel 100%. I view Israel's struggle against Hamas as a kind of canary in the coal mine for a much larger civilizational struggle that you referred to, which is the fight for open societies and liberal, tolerant societies everywhere in defense of a very real assault on their core values. And this assault is coming from one religion above all, and that religion is Islam. There really needs to be a civil war within the Muslim world, and if they can't figure that out, well, then we've got a much larger problem with Islam.
The great clash, it has to be said, is really between the fundamental values of the West and radical Islam in particular.
Are there examples of Israeli soldiers desecrating dead bodies of civilians or taking trophies, or have there been mass rapes of Palestinian women by Israeli soldiers? I haven't heard of anything like that.
Israeli television shows an alleged rape taking place behind a row of riot shields. According to Israeli press reports, the victim suffers
a ruptured bowel, a severe injury to his anus, lung damage, and broken ribs.
But if we did hear of something like that happening, that would be awful. And Israel is precisely the type of society that would abhor that and prosecute the perpetrators.
The fact that even those patients are defined and are called just by a 5-digit number. They don't have a name. They don't move. They're blindfolded, so you do not look at them in the eyes.
That's why the silence on these war crimes is dangerous.
We are the most self-critical people that ever existed.
Important viewing to ensure that these atrocities are acknowledged by the world.
Israel's Channel 12 broadcast a leaked video purporting to show a gang rape at Sdei Taiman.
I think the world has not yet fully come to terms with.
The victim's injuries were so severe.
Caring about this is so important.
He was taken to hospital for emergency surgery.
Women's bodies need to be protected. Men's bodies need to be protected. Women should never be raped. Women should never be brutalized, and neither should men.
When 9 soldiers were arrested, ultra-nationalist Israelis stormed Sdei Taiman, demanding their release.
I especially call upon global political leaders to step up. We need to hear your voices saying loudly and clearly, rape is unacceptable.
Israeli politicians debated whether the rape of prisoners should be allowed.
Rape should never be used as an act of war. Who are we going to believe?
The reports were coming out about not just mass murder, but mass sexual violence.
She was taken to Sdei Taiman and she was nude searched over and over again and filmed. And then she was raped twice.
No matter what you believe should happen in the Middle East, anyone with a mother, a sister, a daughter must speak out now to condemn rape as an act of war.
We have also one testimony of a woman who was also taken. She says she was also raped by an inspection device by a female soldier.
The usual people who should be speaking out were either ignoring it or denying it.
I do think that it took longer than it should have for people to come out and to decry this sexual violence, which was obviously so grievous.
More than once.
And that's not okay.
They inserted the inspection device in her rectum.
There are exactly no circumstances that justify rape.
We have also one testimony of a woman saying that she was strip searched and they would beat her on her behind and they would humiliate her in front of each other.
That is why we are all here today, to speak about unspeakable acts.
Most of the women also who were taken from Gaza, West Bank, and Jerusalem said they were beaten on their genitals.
That is why this moment is so critical.
Which has made us to conclude that there must have been a directive that's been given to the Israeli army to treat women in such manner, because in Jerusalem you're treated by completely different law enforcement.
We have come so far in establishing that rape is a crime against humanity.
Than in Gaza or in the West Bank. But all these women said they were beaten on their genitals.
And we have come so far in believing survivors of sexual assault.
Ambulances clearly marked with lights flashing.
For over a decade, I've been urging women to lean in.
Israeli soldiers open fire and start to kill the rescue workers.
Now I call on everyone to speak out.
They said the convoy was suspicious because its lights were off.
Who are we going to believe?
But when 15 bodies were exhumed from a mass grave, this video from the phone of one of the dead medics exposed the Israeli version of events as untrue.
Silence is complicity. And in the face of terror, we cannot be quiet.
That same day, a member of the Likud party justified the rape and abuse of Palestinian prisoners, yelling, "Everything is legitimate."
Now everyone's competing for land they won't receive. Palestine needs to be free. We live in cities you never see on screen. Not very pretty, but we sure know how to run free. Living in ruins of the palace within our dreams. And we know we're on each other's team. We're kind of over getting told to throw